Hey everybody, welcome to the GMI Rocket Show. I'm your host, Roman Zelchenko, former immigration attorney turned entrepreneur. I am the co-founder and CEO of Laborless, an immigration tech company that automates H-1B visa and perm compliance, and also the founder of GMI Rocket, a digital marketing agency for the immigration and global mobility industry. Today's episode number 153, and we have an incredibly special guest, Bernie Wolfsdorf, who is the managing partner of WR Immigration. So probably everyone in the immigration industry knows of, has worked with, or maybe even served AILA alongside Bernie. But if you don't, Bernie is an immigration lawyer who lives out in California and has built an incredible global immigration practice. His firm, WR Immigration, is one of the first firms that built their own in-house platform called W Rapid. So we'll talk a little bit about that. And it's grown from a West Coast firm to truly a global practice that serves clients all over the world. So I'm really excited to talk to Bernie about his family's immigration journey, his personal immigration journey coming from South Africa to the U.S., and obviously his incredible career so far in the immigration space. But before we bring Bernie on, I just wanted to say a quick thank you to the main sponsor of this episode, E-Immigration by Serenade. So, here's the thing with immigration law, especially as of late, consolidating so much, a lot of immigration case management companies have been acquired and bought and folded into kind of bigger organizations, especially those who don't necessarily focus on immigration anymore. So immigration is actually different. They've been doing this for over 30 years. They're still family run. They're still independent. And if you call them up, a real person who understands and works in immigration picks up the phone and talks to you. On the tech side, immigration has smart tech all across their platform. They've got AI assisted intakes, automated form prep, case tracking that keeps deadlines visible across your entire docket. And in fact, it's so good, they share that firms that use e-immigration grow up to 3 times faster than the industry average. So if you book a demo with e-immigration, one of the really nice things is that they will donate $25 to Mobile Pathways, which is a nonprofit doing really amazing immigration work. They're a nonprofit immigration tech company. And if you actually subscribe with e-immigration, you will get your first month for free. So check them out. Go to eimmigration.com/GMI and book a demo or use the link in the show notes. Alrighty. Thank you to immigration. But more importantly, Bernie, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate your time, and I'm so excited to, talk about your life, your story, your journey, and share it with everybody.
Roman, it's an absolute pleasure to be with you this morning and to share all the dark secrets of my past.
And the bright secrets and all of the industry know-how. So like I shared with you earlier, I really love to get into the personal story, right? I mean, we can talk about your career, of course, until the cows come home, but I think understanding the person behind the firm, the company, the technology is really incredible. So can you share with me a little bit, I know you and I have talked, you grew up in South Africa, but your family immigrated to South Africa. And I know, maybe we're going back a couple of generations, but it's such an incredible story. We were in Krakow earlier this year, and you shared a lot about, your father's side of the family coming from Poland. Can you talk a little bit about like what is that immigration kind of journey in your family that led them to South Africa and then, of course, eventually to the U.S.?
Well, Roman, it's the crisis that faced European Jews with the rise of fascism in Europe. My father was born in Poland in 1911, and he left when he was 19 in 1930, just before Nazism actually took full hold. But he spoke extensively about anti-Semitism and what he experienced. He came from a middle-class family. And now when I reflect back on his journey, this is a guy who, I have a 22-year-old, and he's a lovely boy. recently graduated from USC. But when I think of a 19-year-old kid traveling the world with no papers, stowing away on ships, he was smart enough, I guess, to stow away on a British ship. Otherwise, you get thrown overboard. And he landed in Durban, South Africa. And again, when you're a stowaway, they imprison you on the ship. Mm-hmm. And the Durban Jewish community bailed him out. And hence I was born in Durban, South Africa. My mom is from Hungary. And she left when she was 18. And her eldest brother had come over to South Africa. Why South Africa? Well, look, let's be direct. I think America was always the first choice for a lot of European Jews, but the door was closed. It wasn't that easy. So where did they go? Well, there was Argentina. And strangely, I know my father was there, but I don't know the history because he never spoke about it. Australia. And I know my father spent time in Australia, but again, he wouldn't talk about it. And then finally, South Africa, where, quite frankly, anybody coming from Europe was welcomed and built a life there. And yeah, it's kind of funny when people look at me and I'm like, yeah, I'm an African. And I'm not making anything out of it, but yeah, Africa's in my heart. I love Africa. And for those of you who've never been to South Africa, you've got to put her on your bucket list because it will blow your mind. Just the people, the culture, and it's a beautiful country. But, you know, now I'm an American, and quite frankly, I love America and feel very grateful to America for having given me a home. So
what was it like for you? I mean, growing up in South Africa, you know, I mean, I guess at that point you were embedded in a community with, you know, both your parents.
You know, the reality is I grew up under apartheid. And when you're a kid, you are blind to the political evil would be the correct word. And in 1948, the nationalists, populists took power very narrowly. And yeah, it's kind of weird when I say I'm a product of apartheid. But when I was about 17 or 18, I got involved with a whole bunch of people at university that opened my eyes. And these are very significant individuals, people who realized that this was wrong. And yeah, to be direct, I became politicized. And here was the turning point. In 1976, I was president of the Student Representative Council at my university, University of Natal. It's now called University of KwaZulu-Natal. And yeah, I'm technically a Zulu because I'm born, I mean, it's like Bernie, you're a white guy. I know that, but I'm born in Zululand, and the Zulu culture, which is the largest tribe. Nelson Mandela is Xhosa, but I'm from Natal, KwaZulu, and that KwaZulu people are, all I can say is an incredibly proud, amazing nation. I always refer to the Battle of Isandlwana, and of course I can't remember the date, but it's 18 somewhere. The British, the Zulus wiped out 1,300 British redcoats. It was one of the biggest defeats, spears versus cannon. But the Zulus were very strategic warriors. And this was a huge defeat. They were never conquered by the British. So this is the culture I grew up with. I love the Zulu people. I love South Africa. But in 1976, the apartheid regime decided that Black people had to learn math and science in a third language, Afrikaans. So here you are, not only you had to learn English, but in a third language. This was designed to make it impossible for Black people to become educated in science and math. And the kids rioted. This is called the Soweto Massacre, 1976. I was president of the Student Representative Council, and the government machine gunned hundreds of children. Hundreds were just machine gunned and wiped out. It was beyond obnoxious. I mean, here's you got 13, 14-year-old kids protesting, having to learn in a third language, and they all got killed, hundreds and hundreds, thousands injured. And there was a turning point in the fall of apartheid and the ultimate rise of Nelson Mandela, who became president. So yeah, I was there in a critical period. It gave me a very good understanding of the distinction between right and wrong. And for those of you who've been to South Africa, you'll understand the beauty of that country and of Africa, which is in my heart and always will be. So that's sort of a summary. 1979, I left South Africa, came to America. My eldest brother is a professor of medicine at Harvard Children's, pediatric endocrinologist. So yeah, I stayed in Boston, lived in Boston, went back to law school, became a lawyer, and started this amazing journey. So yeah, that's the early history in a nutshell.
Out of curiosity, despite the fact that you were growing up in really tumultuous times, I don't know, from a family perspective, was there pressure for you to become, a lawyer or doctor or something like that? I mean, did your family press that upon you, or, could you be a little bit more quote unquote free and entrepreneurial and try things? I mean, you were president of the student body, so you were obviously active. What do you remember about that?
Well, I was influenced by Spencer Tracy and other movies with lawyers, Jimmy Stewart, my era. And I said to myself, literally in the first year of college, I want to be a lawyer. I also knew that eventually I would have to leave. So I'm figuring, what is it that I could do that would allow me to transport, if that's the right word, my skill set. So, but I decided from a very early era that I wanted to be a lawyer. I got the idea that lawyers can help people and of course earn a living. And this sounded like a really good way. Plus a lot of us political activists just gravitated towards law because that's an area where you can challenge the regime in that case. And here's an example. I started practicing and I finished law school in 1978. I taught law for a year or two. I was a professor, or as they call it in South Africa, lecturer. I was a barrister. I did 6 murder trials in my first year. In fact, my first ever case was a murder trial where my client faced mandatory death penalty. Mandatory death penalty. They would hang on Tuesdays and Thursdays in batches. This is apartheid. The ultimate sentence. And yeah, I got an acquittal on that one, which I'm very proud of because the state wanted to kill him. And so I got hardened by going into court. It was pretty amazing because most of the judges, it's a wonderful thing about being judges, most of the judges understood justice. Like all of us lawyers, we trained in jurisprudence and the idea of fairness, evidence. So even where you had what I'm going to call iniquitous laws, it was possible to achieve justice in the courts. So that's my early history.
It's amazing that I guess you get a bachelor's of law, because compared to the US system where, you have to decide to be a lawyer during undergrad, but you can't become a lawyer in undergrad. You have to actually then go get your JD. So
That's
you
true.
you came to Boston, and I guess you got your master's of law there.
No, actually, unusual situation. I was a law clerk to Dick Mintz from Mintz Levin,
Okay.
which is a very well-known Boston firm.
Yeah.
And so I was actually, effectively corporate lawyer at that point, or corporate law clerk. And then I had to go back, and the Massachusetts being an ABA school, they wanted me to do the equivalent, and they evaluated the fact that I'd been a professor and trial lawyer, etc. And they made me do about 2/3 of a degree, which I did part-time while working during the day, requalified, passed the Mass Bar.
Oh.
So Boston is my turf, as it were. Sort of a little interesting history, because effectively my mentor was Francis Chin and Curtis.
Mhm.
And as part of our expansion, because Fran Chin's retired, I took over that practice. I also took over the practice of my mentor in LA, which is Mark Ivaner, upon his retirement. And those were some of the early mergers that we did to build WR and grow the firm. So I'm your typical immigrant. One of my partners said, "Bernie, when is it enough?" And I said, "Never." And another one said to me, a good friend of mine, Julie Pearl, who I'm sure you know, said, "Bernie, when are you going to retire?" And I said, "Oh, I'm going the same way as Dale Schwartz. I'm going to die at my desk on a webinar." And she came back with the good one-liner, "Bernie, remember to leave a Post-it note to switch off the lights." And I'm like, yeah, okay. So yeah, that's my plan. That's my exit strategy. Never
Tell me a
enough.
little, how did you get into immigration? I mean, you said you started in, kind of doing corporate, but
I got a good story on everything, Roman, which wherever you go, one of my partners said, "Bernie, you have a story for everything." These stories are true. So I was actually working as a corporate securities associate with a law firm by the name of Memel, Jacobs, Pinot, Gershon, Ellsworth. That was, all I remember is they had the highest starting salary for associates in LA. So having, quite frankly, lived in poverty up to this level, student, usual story, right? No support base, living off my friends, sleeping on my friend's couch, taking bar exams, LA, California, requalifying. So I lived poor, which I think is a good thing, in my brother's basement in Boston. Well, at least I had a basement and didn't pay rent. But so I got this job offer, and my boss said to me, "You should get into immigration." And I'm like, "What? You mean I'm not smart enough to do corporate and securities work?" But, he saw the need. And it was quite interesting because it had happened at a prior big firm that I had worked with, which was Wyman, Boutzer, Rothman, Keekel, and Silbert. They were like the biggest entertainment law firm.
This was in LA, by the way, right?
Yeah. This is in LA, and one of them is like, "Who knows anything about immigration?" And well, I'd worked on my own case and knew a little bit. And the junior volunteer raised his hand. "I can do it." And I don't know, am I allowed to disclose who my clients are? But I think I am, as long as it doesn't bring them into disrepute. My first client that I worked in immigration was Jane Seymour, the actress. And so here's this like little first year associate dealing with major celebrities. And yeah, it was pretty exciting. By definition, if you're in immigration in LA, you're going to deal with celebrities. And obviously, I've dealt with a lot. Elizabeth Taylor was my favorite. And I don't know if I should divulge stories, but, you know, I grew up watching Cleopatra, and she's an amazing actress. And got to meet people like Marlon Brando and all the big names. Because everybody in California, and maybe almost everybody in America, needs an immigration lawyer. Everybody's got an immigration story or somebody who needs help. So yeah, that was sort of the early years.
So, I mean, it's incredible. And, you know, obviously, I can see how that took off, right? Because if you were one of the few people doing immigration, this was, by the way, this was in the late 70s or early 80s at this point.
This is, yeah.
Or late, probably late 80s.
80s, mid 80s. I actually started the firm in 1986. So we just, and I only remember that because we're at 40 years now, otherwise I'd forget. But so what happened is I mentioned two of the firms that I'd been with, big firms. And in Boston, I was with a firm called Grable and Lye, which was, you know, all Harvard grads and started in the 30s. All three of those firms crashed at some point. And I said to myself, you know what? These are like major firms and crashed for different reasons. They split, broke up, don't exist anymore. And I said, you know what? I want to control my own destiny. And that's what made me hang a shingle. In 1986 at Memel, I got the bonus for the top performing associate. That was a big firm of like 200 lawyers or something. That was regarded as big in those days. And yeah, I got the top performing bonus, and I took that and started my practice. And yeah, we haven't looked back. It's we now have just over 220 employees, 10 offices, and we're getting 2 or 3 RFPs a week. It's crazy. I'm going to have to put bars up on the doors. And it's not because I'm a great lawyer. Quite frankly, it's the one area where I've always been an admirer of what you're doing, and that's technology based. And I can get into that story, but it really comes down to a simple one-liner. I'm your typical immigration lawyer, and I classify myself as technologically challenged, but I married a woman. Yeah, she was my client, but we're not going to get into that story, okay? It's okay if you marry your client, okay? And we're now 32 years of marriage, but Shelley had 5 degrees in engineering, and she finished her PhD in 1996 in machine learning. And Shelley's from China, and her English wasn't that good. So I read her PhD thesis, and I'm like, what is all this artificial neural network crap? You know, I mean, this is like such science fiction BS. But there she was in 1996, before they used the word AI, and she did her PhD in machine learning, which, you know, sounds like a fancy thing, but she reminds me that, you know, even a microwave has machine learning. And I'm like, this is something that she had great skill in. And then she did an MBA in finance. So I was AILA president 2009 and 10. By the way, 2008-9 was the closest we ever came to comprehensive immigration reform. We had it in the bag, but it slipped out. That was a very exciting year. We thought we were going to fix these broken immigration laws. You may have heard of the Gang of Eight, but I don't want to digress. That was a bipartisan attempt on the Hill to fix our broken system. and it failed. All my fault because I was in leadership at the time. Now, politics are such that it became difficult.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so what can I say? I was in leadership in 2010. That completely drained me. My practice was struggling. We're about 50, 60 people. And I went to my wife and I said, honey, I need help. This practice is, falling apart. And she came in and she said, yeah, just one thing I need to point out. The way you operate your practice is primitive. Now, being an African boy, I took particular insult at that comment. Calling me primitive. It's an inappropriate word. But she was right. The way we did things was very old-fashioned. And she said, there's a better way to do this using technology. And I'm like, yeah, sure. But she did it. Basically, over the last 10 to 12 years, we have poured I don't want to say every penny, but we have poured millions into building Rapid. By the way, everybody calls it W Rapid. Yeah, I'm the W, but the R points out. The R is my partner, Cliff Rosenthal, the other founder. He likes to joke that the W is silent, which I don't find at all funny, but it's called Rapid. And she built this thing from scratch. And look, it's kind of arrogant of me to say it, but let me tell a little story that doesn't make me too much of a braggart. Last week, we lost an RFP. All the big players were in it, maybe 10. It was a 5,000 plus foreign national population, so like a $10, $15 million account. We came second. And they said, look, you guys clearly have the best technology. There's no question. Rapid's number one. But we're nervous about you because you're only at 220. So they stayed with one of the biggest or went with one of the bigger firms. They were worried about our bandwidth. So look, I get it. There's only a handful of firms. I believe we could easily handle that. The key thing right now with Rapid and with all these corporate clients is number one, automation. Number two, integration. Number three, data privacy. And those are sort of the mantra, but I've coupled that with what we traditionally did, which is called white glove. Mm-hmm. You can talk to your lawyer. Your lawyer knows your case. And I think that's a material difference because we also, of course, have to be cost effective. So I've combined some of the old skills together with this new modern technology. And we've built the system. It's a never-ending process. But it was very exciting when in this RFP, and I'm scared to quote facts, but they were literally clapping during the demo. And they hadn't seen anything like this. It's 21st century stuff.
Well, it's a compliment for sure. I mean, especially if it's an RFP that you lost and they have no obligation to give you any positive feedback, and so that's definitely a compliment.
I was touched by the fact that we've been able to do this. And I just said to myself, one day we'll be there. Yeah. And we've got to keep growing. My goal is to take it up to 500. Then they won't be able to say I'm not big enough. But in the meantime, we are picking up many national brand, Fortune 500, 1,000, 2,000 foreign national clients. And I think we're going to be at the 5,000, 8,000 at the heels of what I call the big girls. quite soon. So yeah, it's very exciting what we're doing.
Amazing. I mean, do you ever reflect on this, now and think about kind of starting off and being the person who raised his hand and said, "Yeah, I know a little bit about immigration. Let me try this case." I'm working with Jane Seymour, and then now, sure, we lose RFPs, we win RFPs, but the fact is, you built this, you know, initially by yourself, then eventually with all the amazing people around you, and to see that kind of where it is today. I mean, do you ever reflect on that?
I'm usually just too busy putting out fires.
Yeah.
There's one thing my ethics lawyer taught me, which is sort of branded. I should have it tattooed. When you see smoke, dive in. So what I do as managing partner, I'm very active. I don't think there are too many managing partners in firms of my size who love practicing immigration law. I mean, I've already confessed that I'm hopeless at management. I'm hopeless at technology. So there is something useful I can do, and that is play immigration lawyer. So I have something called the boo-boo rule in the firm. It's a very significant rule. Every time there's a boo-boo, and that's a broadly defined thing,
Yeah.
they have to bring me in, and I dive head first, because that's what my ethics lawyer did, to put out the fire. And, in today's climate where the policy is, and people don't get this, but I'm lawful, I've been paying all my taxes, I've been keeping in status. And I'm like, yep, you followed the rules and you drive under the speed limit, but they're going to get you. And there's no doubt that the current focus is not about criminal aliens. That's a joke. Obama kicked them all out. The current focus is on reducing the number of immigrants and people who speak with funny accents like me. And, the reality is that this is not the America I dreamed about. When I grew up, I think perhaps because my brother was a professor and a doctor in Boston, I was always enamored with America. And the America that I loved was JFK, Camelot, strong. That was a strong America. Don't mess with us. And they believed in justice. Bobby Kennedy actually came to my university and spoke. So we had the Kennedy room. That was a year or two before I started, but the story of his visit always inspired us. Mm-hmm. Those guys truly inspired me about the greatness of America. And when I studied constitutional law in America, that's the point where I truly fell in love with America. These guys had a vision to create something beautiful, brilliant. And this is the greatest democracy that's ever been created. And that's when I truly fell in love with America, when I studied the vision of the founding fathers and of our Constitution, the most beautiful document. And yeah, I think, that's our duty, is to honor and respect that history. And it's truly a great history, but they've lost their way because that's not how immigrants are being treated today. And, it's not only the best and the brightest. We need skilled workers. We need people to pick the crops. We need to keep our best and brightest. I know you wanted to ask me about the Kazarian case, which is one of my so-called famous cases. So I don't know if I can lead into that, but so I represent a lot of universities and research institutions. I love those cases. And one of them is Caltech. You may have heard of it, California Institute of Technology. Mm-hmm. The brain power there is insane. Those guys are so smart. So there was a PhD researcher by the name of Pogos Kazarian. from Armenia. And they said, Bernie, this is a critical researcher. He's working with Kip Thorne. Kip Thorne is going to win the Nobel Prize. And I'm like, okay, let's do it. And his case had quite frankly been messed up by a few previous lawyers. I filed, I don't know how many petitions for him. But I inherited a really bad one. His lawyer had filed an appeal with the Ninth Circuit, and we got a really bad decision. And I filed a petition to review in front of the Ninth Circuit. And everybody said to me, it's got no chance. You've got to get the majority of 27 judges. And yep, they agreed to reopen the case. It should never have been appealed, by the way, but you know, the way law gets made. The problem with Pogos, who, by the way, is my dear friend and still calls me every week. I love this guy. Is he didn't publish. And he said, look, Bernie, what I'm working on, and sorry, I'm going to mess this up, but his boss, Kip Thorne, and there's something called the LIGO project. This involves the detection of gravitational waves, the origin of human life. I think he was advised on that movie Interstellar, if you saw it, where we're talking to different planets. I mean, this stuff is just chilling. And I always said to immigration, look, I know he doesn't publish. And I told him to publish, and he won't publish. And therefore, he didn't meet their designated criteria. But what he's working on is the very foundation of the origin of humankind. This is so cutting edge. And we had a letter, of course, from Kip Thorne, who did win the Nobel Prize, saying how critical Pogos was to the research that he was doing. And I got an NIW approved. I can only remember it because it's round years. I'd filed in 2010 and it got approved 10 years later.
Right.
In 2020. But yeah, that's the story of Pogos. I mean, here we are trying to deport PhD Caltech researchers that are, I mean, honestly, I know I'm messing up the description of what he did because when we get into gravitational waves, and I think it's Einstein's second theory. I'm a lawyer, come on. I have to take my shoes off to count past 10. So, but the fact is, this is such cool stuff.
Yeah.
And
and you would think the country would be incredibly incentivized to keep, at the very least, somebody like this in the country, let alone, as you said, other skilled workers, and then people who pick the crops, people who work in our senior homes, people who, clean and take care of children. I mean, you name it. I mean, the country cannot possibly run without immigrants across the board.
I understand both sides of the current framework. I love talking about Ronald Reagan. He was known as conservative. But if you listen to his speeches, we're a nation of immigrants. You can go to France and Germany. You're never going to be a Frenchman or a German. You come to America. I consider myself an American. I love America. And I think this is one of the very few countries where you can consider yourself an American through immigration. This is the country I love and appreciate. So that was Ronnie Reagan's view. And then you've got numerous Republicans, the Bushes. Who gave us the 1990 Act? George Bush Sr. So the Republicans have been really good on this until recently. And I think what's happened now is people are looking at the number of immigrants. I think it's absolutely critical as immigrants that we integrate. I think that the overwhelming majority of immigrants do integrate within a first or second generation. But some communities have not. And we see this problem in Europe as well, where people see them. But I mean, this is historical for America. How were the Italian immigrants treated? How were the German immigrants treated? How were the Irish?
Yeah.
I mean, you know, the reality is immigrants go through this, and it's hard. But the current framework is, I think it's being politically exploited because, you know, we love this country. We want to help build this country.
So let me take a quick pause on there, and I think especially on the back of the Khazarian example there, I just want to take a quick pause and say thank you to the second sponsor of the show, ProfVal, which actually I think is very related to the Khazarian case. So ProfVal actually is a company that provides expert opinion letters, professional plans, and immigration business plans. So they work with EB1s, EB2 NIWs like Khazarian, all the way down to like H2, H1Bs, L1s, O1s, E2s, EB5s, and they provide information and documentation that strengthen those petitions with research-backed documents for whatever category. So their expert opinion letters are of course signed by qualified US-based experts, and they're designed, I mean, probably as what you did, Bernie, to explain the petitioner's credentials, their role, their field of endeavor, or even the business in a way that USCIS can accept and agree to. And of course, they provide professional plans and business plans for like E2s and EB5s and L1s and O1s as well. So just for any immigration lawyers out there who are watching, if you handle any of those kind of cases, EB1s, NIWs, O1s, Hs, etc., investor cases, extraordinary ability cases, etc., and you need expert-backed documentation, ProfVal, check them out. They're offering also $75 off for law firms that purchase any one of these things. There's a link in the show notes, and somewhere in that form, type in the word Roman, and you will get $75 off that first plan, I think by October 1st, or maybe October 31st. Anyway, by October. So do it. Check them out. Thank you so much, ProfVal, for being a supporter of the show. And yeah, Bernie, I just thought that was it makes sense because, this is a show about immigration tech, mostly for immigration, global mobility, and we talk about the cases, but so much goes into cases like that, including, of course, how do you prove that this person is an expert? So, I want to, because I don't want to dive into the politics too much. I mean, I know we can talk about that for, hours, surely. But I kind of want to go back to, Bernie, to you. I mean, so you guys build Rapid, right? I mean, as you said, it's an amazing platform. You guys have also gone global. I mean, you started doing inbound immigration in LA. Now you've grown from doing individual cases like that to massive corporates. Obviously, you still work with, investors, EB5 investors. You work with. What's your feeling about the global space? I want to talk a little bit about the global immigration side of WR.
Well, here we've seen a very distinct pattern. Almost every RFP we get has a global component.
Mm-hmm.
And we were in Krakow, so that was the Paradigm Conference. Was my first that I've been to, but my partner, Audrey Lustgarten, is our global director, and she's one of the founders of Paradigm. Again, not every, but almost every single RFP now has a very substantial global component, and the ability to provide high quality global services, including what I'm going to call one-stop shopping. Corporate HR programs, they don't want to really work with 15 different vendors. So the ability to literally do a single one-stop, you take care of our immigration cases, and they want transparency, which you really need technology to show what's going on. Number two, they want automation, because the old way of doing things is, as my wife called me, primitive. I'm still holding that against her. So we don't operate in the primitive way anymore. And I used to have filing cabinets where things were falling out and piles on my desk of documents and papers. Now, of course, we're paperless and we're not allowed to have paper in the office. So, yeah, we've made that transformation. And look, it's been really exciting. We have been able to attract some of the big name AI companies. And, you know, we have 2 offices in NorCal, Oakland and San Francisco. And those offices were very critical because the way they do things up there is slightly different from the way we do things down here in SoCal, NorCal. Just more tech focused, more tech orientated, more tech companies. So that was a critical turning point in our firm 8 or 9 years ago.
Do you think, for folks who are listening, maybe it's somebody who runs a smaller practice in the US, or maybe it's somebody who is a global immigration attorney. Actually, we had a couple of comments here. We had Ben Tsukia who said, "Dzień dobry, guys. Great to see you both, Bernie and Roman. Looking forward to the chat." And so, Ben is based in England. He's on the global immigration side. We've got Charlotte O'Connor, who left a comment. Thank you, Charlotte. Also based in the US. We've got Rachel Scheppenmacher, who says, "Hi, Roman and Bernie." So thank you, Rachel, global mobility professional. So we've got folks who are on the global mobility side. Janet Turner, also on the global mobility and relocation side. So what do you think is happening in the space? I mean, do you think that smaller firms, even if they're not getting RFPs yet, US firms, should they be partnering with global firms? I mean, should they be partnering with someone in the UK, in Spain, in South Africa, in Singapore, or do you think it's going to be consolidation? I guess what are your views from where you sit on how global immigration might be changing, or how support for global immigration might be changing?
Well, technology is taking over every aspect, and it's kind of hard. Yeah, sure, you can hook up with a Serenade, and they've been around for a while, and I think they do a good job, quite frankly. For the average small practitioner, it's kind of hard because we spent, and I don't think I'm factoring in all the labor costs, but we spent probably at least 5 million last year on technology.
Wow.
Plus, we've just plowed in. So how do you do that when you're a little guy? Well, you can go to, a good provider and they can do a system, but clients want the technology linked to what they're doing. I mean, being able to integrate with Workday and the other major is absolutely critical. So there's a lot of things that it's very difficult for the small person to do. So, that's the key is, do you want to stay as a mom and pop operation and look after a handful of people, or do you want to service major international companies with their global reload programs? And by the way, I have to sort of give a shout out. It's lovely you mentioned Ben's on the line, and Charlotte. These are people I know very well. Rachel, I saw Ben recently at a global gathering. Feel sorry for me. It was in Italy very recently in Tuscany, where there was a gathering of all the global folks at what we call Marco's annual get together. If you've never been, get yourself invited. So that's a good. Oh, you gotta go. You gotta go.
Marco, if you're listening to this, I will gladly join you. I will be.
Yeah. Well, but contact me, and you've got to go because there's a gathering of. Marco is a major player in Italy, in Tuscany. He owns a place there, and every year, at least post-COVID, he does this gathering at his home in Tuscany countryside, and there were at least 150 plus global people and we all know each other, and you build up the relationships which are so critical. As much as we become technologically advanced, or the more we become technologically advanced, the more we crave that human. So when you saw Ben, both I and my wife were chewing Ben's ear. Ben is another founder of Paradigm, because we learn from these guys. We learn about all the trends, all the stuff that's not there. There's so much information out there, but is that knowledge, or is that just information? So it's only by speaking to these people you trust and learn about. I've known Ben for years, and so we pick up all the little nuances that are critical for lawyers to provide cutting edge practice. So,
and I think as small firms, sometimes small firms might not be supporting a global player, a large global corporate, but their small clients or small companies might open up one other office in Italy because they sell leather goods, or in the UK because they're a small financial services, boutique company. I'm glad that you're bringing up, Audrey and Ben and Paradigm, because it's a wonderful organization for anyone listening. Paradigm with the GM as our capital GM for global mobility, obviously. It's a wonderful small global mobility member group where you can plug in and really meet some of the finest practitioners around the world, including Marco in Italy and others. So so for you, when you started to build the practice, globally, I guess, where did you start first? Or
one of the things I'm particularly proud of, I've always had a network, I've known a few people, but I was AILA president in 2010, and I don't think I can take credit for this alone, because there were others. But I was instrumental in supporting the foundation of the GMS in AILA. That was when I was in leadership, and we created, prior to that, it was basically the State Department Liaison Committee. And I've always been a big supporter of this global, because, immigration is not just coming to the US. It's about US companies. It's about moving people from Germany to Japan. It's global relo and global mobility. And again, I don't want or deserve a medal, but I was very active in supporting the GMS. In that there were obviously other people as well, but that was during my era. And the GMS, the global migration section of AILA, has really grown, and is a resource for all AILA members. I have to give AILA a plug. I'm still on the board of governors, by the way. I'm one of the few past presidents, or as we call ourselves, the dead presidents, who's active in AILA. And we, I think the GMS is one of the more exciting. So they have a conference before the annual conference. It's like 2-3 days before, and it's just global folks and US outbound. So there's, obviously Paradigm, which is a great association. Ben's one of the founders, together with my partner Audrey. And then, of course, we've got GMS, and everybody belongs to all of these organizations, by the way.
Yeah, that's
There's
true.
several of them, but it's the same crew wherever you go, of people, because having that knowledge and expertise, it's quite narrowly held.
Yep, I totally agree. And frankly, I'm so happy that you came to Krakow, and we got to spend some time together in Poland. I think going to these conferences and meeting people, I'm a big proponent, of course, of traveling and going to conferences, is not only a way to learn about what's happening in other countries, but it is a way to build strong relationships with the true experts in those countries, so that if and when you ever have a question, you don't have to feel like, well, I'm a US immigration lawyer, I don't have any way to answer this. Well, you do. You call up your friend Marco, you call up your friend Ben, you call up somebody else in whatever country you need help with, and it's everybody wins. You help retain a client that is already trusting you. You help bring them business, into their country, and the client doesn't need to go anywhere else, and they could stay with their service providers.
And for me, I had mentioned my father left Poland at 19. I had never gone back to Poland. He never spoke about what happened. But touring Auschwitz-Birkenau and the Schindler Museum, honoring my family and grandparents who died and were murdered, it was incredibly meaningful for me, getting old, understanding where my ancestors are, understanding what they went through. It was quite frankly incomprehensible.
Mm-hmm.
The evil, the definition of evil, the definition of Satan, the definition of these are human beings. I mean, it was just unbearable. So it also rekindled that critical thing in me, which is, at the end of the day, we're helping people. We're helping companies. We're promoting the ability of these companies to be successful, but we're helping people. And that's the part of this job that I truly love, is, every single case we do. And I try to remind all my staff, they all make fun of me because I have this one-liner. It's really stupid. And it goes like this: we don't sell watches. And people who've been with me years later, they come up and say, we don't sell watches. What does that mean? Well, because if you lose a watch, even an expensive one, who cares? But if you botch a case, so I keep reminding my people, we don't sell watches, we deal with human lives. And that's something super meaningful for me. It's a guiding theme for me. I'm quite simplistic. As I say, the only reason I've been successful is I got lucky in marriage and married a woman who understands technology and business, because us lawyers generally, you're the exception, we're terrible in those arenas. Austin Fragman is truly a hero for me. I introduced my wife to Austin Fragman, and she comes back, she's like, after 15 minutes of speaking to him, I learned more than being married to you about, I mean, Austin was a genius. I really have to say that, in his vision, because he's 10 years ahead of us, and he saw this, what we could do and how we could help. And obviously that's how Fragman grew. And I'm in admiration of what those big girls can do. They're impressive operations. And we're coming up from behind with our technology, and we're still moderately little guys, but I'm trying to keep that human side, that passion, that caring for the individual. I call it white glove, whatever color glove you've got, but never forget that, because that's what can make you a great immigration lawyer. It's not a petition or an application. It's a human being and their family. And for those who want to live the American dream, I believe in the American dream. I believe it's alive. It's just undergoing a lot of challenges right now. But I believe our Constitution and this great nation will continue to be great, and the greatest democracy that's ever existed. So proud to be an American, having lived this American dream.
As an immigrant myself, I fully agree with you. Bernie, I guess as my final question here, what advice are you listening to right now? A lot of people ask, what advice would you give somebody? What advice are you taking right now at your stage in your career, at the stage in, maybe with what's happening in immigration, et cetera, given, looking forward?
Well, I believe that we can contribute to this American dream in many ways. There was an email this morning. There's a group called the AILA Past Presidents. This is such when you think of names like Klasko and Kurzban and the legends, these are my heroes too, by the way. So the collective wisdom of this group, with its depth, has so much to contribute. So through AILA, be active, one case at a time. I had never, up till a few years ago, I'd hardly filed any federal district court litigation. At the moment, I think we filed more than 100 cases this year, and we're filing habeas cases, and we're winning in the courts. Of course, they're fighting back. So the bottom line is democracy is complicated. Elections are complicated, but I believe in the American people. I believe in the American system. And, we can already see changes starting to happen. So, follow the law, follow the regulations, challenge the system when they do illegal things, and step by step. So every day, we keep going. There's new challenges. Every Friday, the government drops something new. We call it Freaky Friday. I haven't seen what the drop today was, but I saw earlier this week, they want to get rid of RFEs and NOIDs. And people may complain about RFEs and NOIDs. What that means is you're going to get straight denials.
Right.
So there's horrific stuff, not to mention the new rules on D/S, duration of status. So every day we have new challenges, but, compared to what my father faced as a 19-year-old traveling without papers throughout the world, I had a cruise. I had it easy. Americans have it easy. They don't appreciate the enormous benefits that we have being an American living in this beautiful country. So I don't have a single point. Appreciate what you've got. Go step by step and just focus on the incredible history and amazing constitution that created this beautiful country. And that's where I think we should all be as Americans. How do we contribute? How can we give back? And how can we make this a better country? And I believe we'll get there. I believe we'll go through various changes, but that the light will keep shining and the greatness of this nation will continue to benefit all of its citizens and humanity. Yep, we're going through a hiccup right now, and it's pendulum time. The pendulum is swinging the other way. But we have a constitution, and Americans are kind, compassionate, good people, proud people, patriotic people. And if we look at America's history, yeah, we have some dark chapters. But if we look at all the bright chapters, I think we should be very enthusiastic about the future, very enthusiastic about America as a nation of immigrants, and hopefully we'll see some compassion coming back into the system.
Amen. Bernie, thank you so much. This was, can't think of a better way to end the episode. I appreciate you. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for sharing your story, your journey, your family's journey, and obviously everything you've built so far and continue to grow. So,
well, it's our team, and I've been an admirer of you. You're one of that new young generation with a vision, understanding the importance of technology, focusing on the bigger picture of what we're all doing, and bringing us together under a tent, which is pretty exciting. So, Roman, keep doing what you're doing, and I'm going to keep moving forward one step at a time. And what can I say? It was good hanging out with you in Krakow. I hope some of my story didn't put your listeners to sleep, but, I guess podcasts are a good way to go to sleep as well, right?
Quite the contrary. I think everybody loved it. That's why we got so many comments. So thank you. I appreciate that, Bernie. Really, it means a lot to me. So
thank you, Roman. So it's been a pleasure. Have a lovely weekend. Bye.
Thank you. What an amazing episode. Thank you so much, everybody, for all your comments, for listening, for tuning in. I didn't get to all the comments here that were left, but What an inspiring story. And to me, it's like you build an incredible firm over 40 years, and the end result is let's keep going and let's keep growing and let's continue to get the next client. And you lose an RFP, that's okay. You come back the following year and you try it again, and you hopefully you win it the next time. So really love the story. Thank you so much to everybody. And once again, I just want to give a quick shout out and thank you to e-immigration for being the main sponsor of the show. As a quick reminder, e-immigration is an immigration case management company that has been around for 30 plus years and remains a family-based, independently run company. They have not been acquired. They are, the company that when you have a question or you have a problem, you call them, and a human being picks up the phone who understands immigration, works in immigration, and will help you with whatever you need. On the technology side, they've got AI assisted intakes, automated form prep, case tracking, and just a lot of technology all across the platform to keep your immigration deadlines visible and accessible across your entire docket. And firms that use e-immigration grow up to 3 times faster than the industry average. So, I am a board member of Mobile Pathways, which is an immigration technology nonprofit organization. And e-immigration, if you book a demo with them, will donate $25 to Mobile Pathways. So you know what? Even if you're not interested, book a demo, help donate to an amazing nonprofit, get to know the e-immigration team. If not now, maybe in the future you'll use them. And if you do sign up with them, of course, you will get your first month free. So check them out. Check the link in the show notes or visit eimmigration.com/GMI to book your demo. So thank you to them. Thank you to all the listeners. I appreciate you. See you next week for the next episode. In the meantime, have a wonderful weekend. Stay safe and peace out.